KFUG Crescent City, 101.1 on your FM radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. This is Public Process. I'm your host, Mike Thornton. 8 minutes past the top of the hour here on the north coast of California. I am very pleased to be joined by the new executive director of the Crescent City and Del Norte Chamber of Commerce, live in studio today, Cindy Vosburg. Cindy, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Mike. I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Well, I am really pleased that you were able to come and be with us today. So we're going to talk about the chamber and what it does and the role it plays in the community. But as usual, what I like to start off with is finding out a little bit about who you are as a person, right? I mean, you know, a lot of times, and particularly, I think it probably applies to you. You've been in this community a long time. You have a public persona, and I'm sure many people know that, and maybe other people know some of what's behind that, but I don't. And so I know a little bit because we've been talking off air, and I hope we can talk about some of that as well. So, I mean, what is it about your life and your experiences that leads you to now be the executive director of the Crescent City and Del Norte Chamber of Commerce?
Well, Mike, some people know me as a newspaper woman.
Yes, you were involved with the Triplicate for a long time.
Over 40 years in the newspaper business. And a couple times during those 40 years, I left the newspaper to go get a real job and make real money. And both times within a year or two, I found myself missing that newspaper media and being accused of having ink in my blood and going back to it. What I found out as a young woman working for my first newspaper, I had a boss that was very passionate about the chamber. And the first thing that she did would be introduce us to the chamber and get us signed up to be ambassadors. And so from about 1978 until now, I've always been involved with the chamber in some way, either as an ambassador or then when I moved up here as a board member in Manteca, where I lived prior to moving up here, the Escalon area. I was a member of the chamber, a board director there, and was on their steering committee for the CVB, which is Convention and Visitor Bureau. And so when I moved up here in 2007, one of the first things that I did was become involved with the chamber. And I sat on their board in various capacities, first as secretary, and then as the treasurer, which was interesting, and then as president and past president. And so I have always felt that the chamber is the most effective business networking organization in any business community. And so when this position became open, and I had been retired for a couple years and enjoying it, but decided it was time to go back to work, the chamber was a natural position for me to apply for, their director. You were talking, of course, about your lengthy involvement in print journalism and newspapers. That didn't start here in Del Norte. I mean, you actually were drawn to that work when you were living in Central California as well. You were telling me a little bit about your first application to the newspaper there. Can we talk a little bit about that? Sure, you bet. So I was actually working for Cal Farm Insurance and was their secretary. And we had a newspaper rep named Rita that would come see us each week and try to sell us some ads. And she came in one week and said, "Oh, we have an opening at our newspaper. You should apply for it." And I did. And that was my entry. It was called the Manteca News, and it was in 1978. And I became an outside sales rep. What I found, what I truly love about the newspaper business at every level that I've worked at, is that I could help local businesses be successful. And the larger the paper was, and sometimes even the larger the market was, the more successful those businesses could become. One of the things I wanted to do after I'd worked at the small weekly for a few years is I wanted to go on to a larger paper, and that was the Modesto Bee. Well, the Modesto Bee wouldn't hire me because I didn't have a marketing background. or a marketing degree. And so they said, perhaps if you had a media mix background, we would hire you. And so that's what I did. I went out and I interviewed with one of the many stations there in the Modesto market, and I went to work for KOSO Radio and spent a couple years learning about other types of marketing other than just print.
And one of the things that I was understanding from our discussion before we went on air is that I think it's something that you and I have in common, is that our knowledge of these businesses is largely experiential, learning while doing, right?
Right.
And the reason why I bring that up is, and I want to, today's the first day of school, right? Okay. And so I want to be really clear. I'm not advocating for people not to go to school. I guess what I do want to say, and I'd like to talk with you about this a little bit, that there are other ways to find yourself in a fulfilling career where you can not only enjoy it for yourself and your own personal gratification, but also be able to do something that's really contributing to the community in ways that are not considered standard and traditional. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does.
And like I said, I want to be really clear. I'm not advocating for people to like drop out of school and things like that. I guess what I am advocating for is not writing people off who don't do those traditional processes.
So, Mike, what we were talking about is that, like you, I'm pretty much self-educated. When I was in high school, I found by the time I hit my sophomore year, I was so bored in high school, I could not stand it. I would watch that clock go minute by minute and make a little click each time before it would move. And I ended up dropping out of high school during my sophomore year. My parents were very ill. I ran the household. I took care of them. I paid the bills. And I felt at my wise age of 15 right. that I knew that I needed to go to work versus staying in school. And so for a year, I pretended to go to school every day. And I would get dressed and pretend to get on the bus. And instead, I went and I had a job across the street from the high school called Fundies. And I worked there for that year. And I brought home my paychecks and I helped pay the bills with them. After I did that for a year, and it was during the summer of going into my junior year, I knew I couldn't continue this, that I needed to get back into school. And my parents were not getting any better, and I needed an education. So I went and I let my mother know what had been going on, and she helped me, and we went out and got me signed up at the local continuation high school. And they got me in there. I wasn't a bad kid, so I couldn't get in without their help because I had done nothing wrong. But with my mom's help, she got me in. And for the next year, I went to day school and I went to night school, made up my lost credits. And I actually graduated a year early and got out of school. And I graduated with a 4.2. But during that last year of continuation school, I was enrolled in a program called Manpower. And this was in San Joaquin Valley. And it's similar to the programs that we have local here, where they'll take disadvantaged youth. And, I'm half Mexican, so I had a minority class as well. And they got me into this work program, and I was hired by the city of Manteca. And for that, my last year, which was actually my junior year, I worked for the city of Manteca, gaining office experience. And that's what opened the doors for me into the world of business. And so I was married by the time I was 17. I've been married 44 years. I have two lovely children, and they're now 42 and 40. And I made sure they got an education, and both went on. One went into the military. The other one, she has her PhD. And so education, I believe, is critical. But I believe that different people learn in different ways, and that for whatever reason, the traditional high school wasn't for me. But on-the-job training and manpower programs and being able to work and help support my family was what enabled me to have the motivation to keep learning.
We're speaking with Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City and Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City, 101.1 on your FM radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. As you know, last week I had Christy Hernandez of the Workforce Center on, and just what you've been saying made me think that I think in the time frames that we're talking about in our lives, there were a lot more avenues for those kinds of things, whether it was manpower or, OJT, or there were a lot of different things. I think there's less of that now for young people. I think a lot of those things have been cut back. Would you agree with that?
I am not sure of that. I know that this summer that we benefited at the chamber office, as did many of the organizations, offices, businesses here in Crescent City, by the E3 program that Christy is facilitating. And that was wonderful. We had two students, one on that program, one on another program, that we were able to teach everything from how important it is to show up to work on time, how to count money back, how to answer the telephone, how to take a message. And so all of those basics we were able to provide to those students, and it's all programs like the Manpower or E3 programs.
Yeah, the E3 program is quite good, and I think that the Workforce Center does an excellent job of running that and doing that, and I'm speaking for myself now, not for anybody else, with probably a lot less than they could use in actually doing it. They do a great job. So let's go ahead and move into business, if we can, in the community. And let me segue by doing this. Another thing that Christy said was that a lot of the emphasis that they do at the Workforce Center is working with people to develop so-called soft skills. From your position, working with business owners, is that a major challenge for business owners in this community when they're looking to hire people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was at the Triplicate and now at the Chamber and talking to many of the different businesses, we all have the same struggle, and that's finding qualified candidates for our positions that are open. The other struggle is to be able to afford and pay livable wages. And, our business community is struggling with that. As the minimum wage goes up, so do their costs. And many times, a business owner on these small businesses may be the only person in their store. And so they open it in the morning, they're there all day, they work through lunch, their kids need to be picked up, but they're not the ones who can leave the store to go get them. They're keeping their businesses going. And, it's not an easy solution on what do we do about meeting the rising cost of business and yet being able to be sustainable and keep ourselves in business.
We're talking with Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City and Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. So what role does the Chamber play in assisting business in this community in dealing with the array of issues and challenges and opportunities that they encounter?
The Chamber is the largest, as I've already mentioned, networking organization in the community. It enables Chamber members to talk with Chamber members. We have one arm that is marketing, where we can send out, first off, let me say this, a membership is incredibly inexpensive. The memberships range from $50 to $85 for nonprofits to $100 for a business that's one or two, and then on up. We have very few levels that are above the 260, which is, I believe that level is 11 employees or more. So most of our membership is at the small scale. We have almost 400 members. And, I can remember many years hearing, well, what does the Chamber do for me? Well, what the Chamber does is it allows a business to network with other businesses. And, people who are Chamber members, have a business license, have had their doors open for a number of years. Everybody has something that they can contribute to the other. So ways that they can do that, we can post on our Facebook page for you. If you have a message that you want to get out to the public at large or other members, we can send for free out in the newsletter that we do each month. Hopefully we do it twice a month. We'll gear up for that. A free message, and that's either a flyer or we'll make up a flyer in some cases for someone that has a real rough idea of what they want. We will do, we have the mixers each month, a couple mixers a month, where you can come out and talk with other members. We have, we can send out to the mailing list for you for a small fee, a message to all the other members. So what it does is it allows you to communicate with the other businesses who are just as busy as you are. The other thing that we do is economic development. Economic development, what does that mean? Well, I'm still learning that. I'm not even 2 months on this job, and there's it's an ever-changing, colorful creature, this position that I've agreed to take on. And some of the colors are beautiful and others are terrifying. But what I'm finding is that economic development is critical, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the chamber is going out and finding new businesses and luring them here to Crescent City to open. Economic development can be as important as helping the businesses that are already here be successful. Parts of that is what kind of training can we provide? We're working with the SBDC. Currently, we're negotiating with them.
And SBDC?
Small Business Development Center. And so we're working with them on bringing some of the lunch and learns back to Crescent City, where our chamber members can come. We'll feed you a sandwich and a soda and some chips, and you'll spend an hour on a topic that's important to you. We met a couple weeks ago with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, for Northern California. Julie was her name. She was here, and they're in charge of all of the federal funding that comes out of the SBA. So we shared with them what are the needs here in Del Norte County, what do we need from them, what can they do to help us. Sometimes, many times, we're passing on to them just what available information we have and trying to make sure it's the best information that we can. So, our goal, one of my main goals in this position is I want to touch every member over the next year. And so if that means that I am contacting 5 or 10 members every week and just having a conversation so that I can understand what our members' needs are and what we can do to help, that's my number one goal.
We're talking with Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City, 25 minutes past the top of the hour. So, Cindy, economic development, community development is something that I'm really, really interested in. And so you opening that subject leads me to ask you this. I was at the relatively recent economic summit, and Adam Goldstein was sort of the featured speaker, and I interviewed Adam and had him on the air, and have talked to several other people about this, and so let me just put my cards completely on the table, right? It sounds like when it comes to economic development for this community, there is an emphasis, or a growing emphasis, on tourism and attracting reasonably wealthy Bay Area millennials to the community to, build property, buy property, create create a tourism mecca for them. To what degree are local business people and the chamber involved in these strategies? You can tell me that's not the strategy if you want. Who are not involved in those type of businesses? And because I've seen communities that have done that have gone all in on tourism. It works for some people. It winds up not working for a lot of people, particularly the people who have to work and live in those communities and who are native citizens. And I don't mean native in the tribal sense. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
So could I ask you a question,
Please.
Mike? So where have you seen this, and where have you seen it perhaps have ill effects, or maybe keep the minimum wage or the earning wages down to minimum wage?
A good question. I've seen it happen in many of the communities along the Highway 49 corridor, the Sierra Foothills communities, Gold Country communities, old mining and logging communities, that when those businesses crashed, very often the communities had very little in the way of economic opportunity, and many of them went into tourism, and it brought money into the community, no doubt about that. It also brought wealthy retirees from the Bay Area and wealthy retirees from Los Angeles area. Brought those people in, property values went up. The people who were born and raised in those communities couldn't afford those, and most of the jobs, not all of them, but many of the jobs wound up being service level jobs. Waitresses, maids, cooks, those kinds of things. None of those jobs paid enough wages to actually be able to live and thrive in those communities. In some cases, people had to move to communities 30 miles away and commute to where they used to live. That would be impossible here. So I want to be really clear about this. I'm not like anti-tourism. I just want to, I'm just interested, are there deeper discussions being had about how to create what I refer to as a thrivable community versus simply let's just bring as much money as we can and then that'll fix everything. Does that make sense?
So let me approach it this way.
Please.
Okay. So, I moved here in 2007, but my roots go all the way back to my childhood. My aunt and uncle, Everett and Eva Lawless, lived here. My cousins, the Lawless family, which now 2 generations later is the Bertolinis, because my cousin Teresa married into the Bertolinis and has some beautiful Bertolini children. So we came up, and my uncle was a commercial fisherman. He owned the Eva first, which he raised his family out of a little fishing boat. And then he purchased the Orion, and that's what he retired out of. And in the off season, he was a lumberman, a timberman. And my cousins grew up fishing and in the timber industry. And then our economics up here changed. And as each year goes by, as the fishing and the timber decreases, the government footprint has increased. And almost 50% of our economic base here is through the state, the county, the city, the Fed, and the prison.
Right.
I believe it's roughly 49%.
And transfer payments of one kind or another, Social Security, those kinds of things as well.
Okay, so where does that leave us? Where can we grow? We have the beautiful Smith River Valley with all of that rich river bottomland that can grow some of the best crops and can grow some of the best beef and chickens and whatnot. But there's only so much space there. We have so much of our land that is tied up with the national and state parks, which is why it's so beautiful here, because we protected those lands. So where are our opportunities? We know that in order to grow our retail business, we've got to have enough of a population to support those retailers. And that we all know that we're lacking in medical. If you need to see a specialist, so many times we're forced out of our community to Santa Rosa or Medford or Eureka. So where can we grow? Tourism is probably the lowest laying fruit that we have. So just because we grow that tourism footprint, there's different dollars that come in. There's the dollars that come in that people bring it in and spend the dollars. And when I say and I truly believe our future is tourism. That's what I see, is those tourists coming here and spending those dollars. And if they spend the dollars, then we should be able to support the service businesses. But there's still, when you and I got out of high school, we were able to easily find jobs.
That's right.
Right? There was so many jobs to be had. During high school, it was so easy to find a job. My first job at Fundy's was a great source of income. And then it was McDonald's. And then thankfully I got out of the food service because I was able to get on a manpower program that got me into the office and broke me. Otherwise, I'd probably still be a waitress right now. Of course, tips aren't all that bad either, but it's really hard on your feet and your wrists after a few years. So where is the opportunity? And Mike, if it's not tourism, where do you think it is?
Well, I don't know that I necessarily have the answer, and I guess what I'm saying is, and once again, I hope I'm being clear. I'm not saying that tourism should not be a component of community and economic development. I mean, I think it's an obvious part of it. I guess my concern is that what role does that then play in what I think of as the thrivability of the entire community, right? And who is at the table helping to craft those plans and those strategies for community development of which economics is a part, right?
Right.
Because I think what can happen is that a few people get at a table and go, this is what we're going to do. Well, yeah, it's going to work great for you. I don't blame you one bit for wanting to do that. But who's at the table, and are the businesses who will not directly benefit from tourism, are they at the table? Is the chamber at the table? Are people who actually understand community development and economic development as a part of creating a thriving community at the table? And are these discussions happening? Does that make sense?
It does. So I will share with you, although I can't give you specifics.
That's fine.
That next week, I believe it's on the 28th, is a meeting at the Cultural Center that the city is calling. And it's bringing together a large group of people to talk about where's our future.
Right.
And so the chamber is included in that. There is a big list of quite a few different community members that are included in that. And if anybody would like more information on it after this interview, if you would like to contact me at the chamber, I can put you in contact with the person who contacted me and invited me to the meeting.
And if you want to give out contact information at any time during this, please feel free to do so. And we will also do it before you're out of here for today.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So the chamber number is easy to remember because it's the 464, and then 3174 is the phone number. So again, you can contact me there anytime.
We're talking with Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City and Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. This is KFUG 101.1 on your FM radio dial worldwide, kfogradio.org. I'm Mike Thornton. The program is Public Process, 1136 on this Monday morning. Cindy, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for sharing that with me and with our listeners, because for me, that's the most important part. That real human beings in the community are actually getting together and saying, okay, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go? How is this all going to work? And how is it going to serve as broad a spectrum of our community as possible, right?
Right.
Yeah. And you know, like I said, no particular business or industry by itself can fulfill the needs of an entire community. This is just my opinion. You know, you have some tourism, you have some ag, you have some small craft, you have, you know, different things where people are maybe selling products over the internet, things like that. You know, hemp and marijuana. I know that's a hot button issue for some. Has the chamber taken a position on hemp and marijuana?
You know, I don't know if we have or not. During my, 5, 6, 7 weeks, I think I've been on the job. It hasn't come up as of yet, but I'm sure there's been conversations in the past before I joined the chamber board or director.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. How are decisions made on those type of topics?
Well, we have, the chamber is set up, we are a nonprofit organization. We're set up with a board of directors that consists of 15 members. We meet once a month. We have an executive board, which is 5 members, which is your president, past president, your vice president, who becomes typically the president the next year, your secretary, and your treasurer. They're called the executive committee. So we meet on the third or fourth Monday of the month. We set up the agenda for the coming Friday meeting, and at that meeting, we present to the entire board. We were recently approached by a group out of Sacramento that's to keep Proposition 13. And so what I did is I gathered all of the literature from this organization. They were asking us to endorse them. And then I turned it over to the executive committee, who then turned it over to our advocacy group. And so our advocacy committee will research it and then make a recommendation to the chamber board as a whole, and they will vote on whether to endorse this fight for Proposition 13 or not. And that's how most decisions are made. The mundane, day-to-day things that don't require, a lot of brain power, I handle. And
I do not believe that they don't require a lot of brain power, and I know you've got all the brain power you need, and I doubt that a lot of them are mundane. That's just my guess.
Well, what we try to do is we try to keep the meetings down to an hour for each one, so that we're not there for 2.5 hours. And we operate on volunteers. All of our board members, all of our ambassadors, all of our visitor center volunteers are people that are giving back to their community, not because they are making any money off it, but because it's the right thing to do. And one of the things that I would like to talk about today is that we need more volunteers. If you live in this community, within the sound of my voice, I don't know how far out you go, but within a car drive to the chamber, and you love Del Norte County and our beautiful redwoods and our oceans and our fresh air and the wildlife that's here, please come down to the visitor center and meet with Michelle, who's our visitor center coordinator, and she will set you up to come in and volunteer for 3 hours a week, once a week for 3 hours or more if you like, and share that love and that passion with people who are coming through on vacation. These people are so happy to be here. They are so thrilled to be on vacation, and they've never seen such beautiful trees and such clean beaches and such wonderful air. So come down to the center. Michelle will get you trained up, and you can share your love for the area.
I worked across the street from the chamber office at Wild Rivers Community Foundation for a couple of years, and people were coming in there all the time going, "Is this the chamber?" I go, no, it's across the street. So a lot of people do come in, and a lot of people are seeking information about all of the things that you mentioned. I just want to go back only because I happen to know about it. The issue around Proposition 13. I would encourage you and the chamber to also talk to people I used to work with, True North Organizing Network, about that, because the organization that they are affiliated with in California is part of the group that is sponsoring that ballot initiative about Proposition 13.
To save it?
No, actually to change it.
To change it.
Yes. And, my understanding is that the aspects that are being changed or are being proposed to be changed in the ballot initiative are related to how big businesses take advantage of Proposition 13, not to try and eliminate, so grandma winds up having to pay all of a sudden $10,000 a year in property taxes. But I would encourage you to also get information from them if you haven't already.
I just wrote their name down.
Because it's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal. And because there's so much money involved in it, there's going to be a lot of fight around it, particularly as we get into next year, because the ballot initiative will be on the ballot in November.
Correct.
This is my understanding.
Right.
We're talking with Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. This is Public Process. So, Cindy, I want to ask you about another issue, and this was something that we talked about prior to you coming on the show a little bit. Well, at least I said I would ask you. What role does the chamber and the business community play in addressing bigger issues of community concern. And as I said, I'm particularly interested in the topic of homelessness because I think it affects the entire community, including the business community. I'm just curious what role the business community and the chamber plays in addressing those things.
Oh my gosh, Mike, isn't it's such a terrible problem? It's so huge.
Yeah.
It is so huge. And it's such a, on one hand, it is so darn sad. It's so sad to see people that don't have a home, that don't have a shower, that doesn't have a bathroom with their own toothbrush in the medicine cabinet. It's so sad to see these people just trying to survive on the streets, and not just here, but everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just here.
I remember being, just a young girl watching TV, and it used to be, what hits my mind is the homeless in New York, the cardboard cities, and how they, it would be snow time, it'd be a crime drama, and they'd be going through the homeless camps. And now that's here. We don't have the snow and we don't have the volume that the big cities have had, but we've got a huge community of homeless people. And what are we going to do? What are we going to do with and for all these folks? And I've seen the articles and I've seen the online posts and I've seen the pictures of people urinating in the statue, or people, the comments about the person that was sleeping in the lobby of the post office a few months ago. And Mike, we don't know the answer any more than you do.
That's right.
But I'll tell you this, I know this. If we don't come together as a community, it's not just the city's problem, it's not just the county's problem, it's not just the local business or the individuals. It affects everybody. And we need to come together as a community to figure out what the heck we can do to help these people. And I know that there's the opinions that, they don't want help. Well, I totally disagree with that.
So do I.
I think that's just crazy to think that these people don't want help. They may not know what help they want or what they need or how to get the help, but nobody willingly lives on the street when they've got other choices. And it very well could be that there are other choices that they feel are even worse than living on the street.
Well, I know I've done a fair amount of work in this area, not just in this community, and the reasonably good numbers that most people I know who know something trust is, we have like 350 homeless adults and up to another 200 homeless students. Homelessness for people who are minors is gauged differently, so it's not necessarily that they're all out in the streets or in the swamps or whatever. I mean, it's a lot of folks, and it impacts, I think it directly impacts business, because I think, I've seen many business owners saying, I've got people sleeping outside my doorstep. It scares my customers. I can imagine that there are people who drive into town and go, oh my gosh, there's a lot of homeless people here. Maybe I'll just keep driving to Brookings, So, I think the business community has a direct self-interest in this, not just simply let's be nice and kind to homeless people.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Because it's the right thing to do.
There's an impact for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it affects our real estate. It affects our retail. It affects every aspect of business, for sure.
Well, and our law enforcement and all of that as well. That, in many ways, and I'll be speaking, I'm sure, with Chief Minsel about this, I want my cops arresting bad guys. That's where I want them stopping crime, keeping people from hurting each other, keeping people from stealing each other's stuff. That's what I want my cops doing. I don't want them being de facto mental health counselors and all of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We're speaking with Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City and Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. So, Cindy, I want to thank you for addressing those bigger issues. But I know that the Chamber also is engaged in promoting various events and things like that, right? What are some of the things that are coming up?
Well, we're working on Sea Cruise right now.
There you go.
And so since I've got the opportunity here, I would like to make a plug. If you haven't been contacted by the Chamber, please give us a call send me an email. I'm at director@delnorte.org. We could use your support through sponsorship dollars. We put together with the Northern Knights Car Club, a great organization, and with the help of many, many sponsors, we put on this great car shoe gig right here in town. It is one of two of our major fundraisers to help fund the chamber. And so please reach out to me. We have sponsor dollars from $300 on up for packages, and that also gives you an advertisement in the Del Norte Triplicate. And we also have for $25 or $50 individual sponsorships for the plaques, the trophies that go to the Sea Cruise folks, to the entries, registrants. So we have right now, our goal is 335 entries. We definitely worked upstairs we worked with the man upstairs, so we won't have rain this year like we did last year. So please help us with Sea Cruise. We also do 4th of July. 4th of July is the biggest event here in Crescent City, and we'll start working on that again right after the first of the year.
So that leads me to another question. How is the chamber funded? I mean, basically, are you out having to beat the pavement to make sure that there's money to do all of this stuff?
I do. We do. Absolutely. So we're mainly funded in the form of our membership and the event fundraising. That's where the bulk of our funds come in at. You know, we do a couple other events, which is the annual dinner and the economic summit, both which serve an important role in this community. And our goal with both of those is not to fund the chamber, but just to cover the cost of both of those events. You know, my favorite thing that we do has been since my very first year of attending is the Economic Summit, because it's a great opportunity. Mike, you mentioned you were there last year, where we've got this a room full of business people, different kinds of business owners and business people that are all coming together. And I just love the energy that creates. The annual dinner, which is in January each year, is an event that people get to get dressed up and network with each other as they're having a wonderful dinner, and usually listen to Kevin Hartwick with his great ability with the mic, keep us entertained for the evening as we put out the business awards and the nonprofit awards and whatnot.
We're speaking with Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. 1150, this is a public process. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City. So, looking forward from your perspective, what are you hoping to accomplish with the chamber, and how that will help this community improve in the way it provides quality of life for the people who are here?
Mike, the chamber is nothing more and nothing less than the whole of our citizens. It takes a village to accomplish great things, and the chamber is a part of that village. Our community, with its homelessness, with its beautiful trees and beaches, with its great staff at the city. I got to tell you, I'm so impressed with the city of Crescent City, with Eric Weir and the job he does and the people that work for him. I especially now get to have exposure to them almost on a daily basis because we're housed in the Cultural Center on Front Street Park. And those people, they go to work every day and they bring their passion and their love for the city, and it shows in the job that they do. Well, I believe that our community is only as good or not good as all of us.
Right.
It's nothing but streets of pavement and concrete, and it's all of us that bring it to life. And so my goal in the coming years as the chamber director is to make sure that I do everything within my power to understand what the needs of our membership is, what the needs of the visitors who come into our visitor center and into our beautiful city, and what the needs of our citizens are, and try to communicate that with each other and find ways to fulfill those needs.
I've had an opportunity to interact with Eric Weir, and we've also had him on as a guest on this program. Now, he's Yeah, he's the real deal, I think.
He's the real deal, yes.
He is.
Right.
And as, and once again, this is me saying it, as are you. And I really appreciate, I think the chamber is going to be in good hands moving forward. And we need all of the entities and individuals and community leaders working together, because I think you made it a really, really good point. None of these things are things that can be dealt with by one person or one group, one elected official or elected board or one chamber of commerce or one business or one nonprofit. It really is the bringing together of all of those forces and all of their perspectives that will allow us to have the kind of community that we want to have.
That's right. Exactly.
So I'm going to give you who are listening an opportunity to go get that pen and paper, because you want to get this contact information that Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City Del Norte Chamber of Commerce, is going to give you in case you're a business owner, or maybe you're somebody who wants to be a business owner. You want to help with or help fund one of the important events that are coming up, or the chamber as a whole. So Cindy Vosburg, if people want to get more information about all of the things that the chamber is doing, how do they go about doing that?
Well, they can call me at 707-464-3174. You can email me at director@delnorte.org. Or even if you want, send a carrier pigeon or a Post-it note, whatever works for you. But just get the word out there that you want to talk with us, and we would love to talk with you.
Or stop by.
Oh, absolutely. 1001 Front Street. We're there. We're there 7 days a week right now, in fact, but I'm only there 5 days a week, so Monday through Friday.
Well, I have to say, I'm really glad to hear that you're not there 7 days a week. That's not good for anybody to be working 7 days a week. Cindy Vosburg, any final words for our audience today?
You know, Mike, there is something I want to mention that's a little bit aside from the chamber business.
Please.
However, you and I touched on it before we went on the air, and it's something that I believe is very important for our community, and that is our local newspaper. I have great love and passion for a newspaper. It serves such an important role in a community, and it is our place to where 20, 40, 60, 100 years from now, people can go back to that newspaper as the origin of record for something. And so please support the local paper. I know we have new owners, and I know there's been a lot of changes, and a lot of the people that we love who've been there for a while are no longer there. And I love those people too. But it's bigger than an issue of just having who is on staff at the paper. The big thing is that we have a local newspaper and that we help them survive and succeed and thrive. So please support your local paper and your Chamber of Commerce.
Absolutely, because we need local news coverage, whether it's print, radio, whatever it may be.
We need it all. That's right.
We need it all. So let me just ask one question. Have you had any contact with the new owners?
I have.
Okay, so you're actually having discussion with them?
I have had contact with them, and I would say that I got to meet Carol Hungerford last week. I actually met her a few weeks ago for the first time when she paid a sales call with her sales rep on the chamber. But then I was able to have lunch with her last week. And Mike, I got to tell you, she is a lovely woman. She is so knowledgeable. I'm so impressed with her and with what she's accomplished in her life. And I think that if we give them a chance, that they'll be able to prove out that they're here for the right reasons. Although they got a rocky start, and they're the first to admit that, they're here for the long haul, and they want to give us a good, solid local newspapers in both here and Brookings.
Hopefully that will happen, and we'll see as time goes on, right?
And I would like to thank you very much for inviting me and having me here today and allowing me to have this opportunity to speak to your listeners.
No, we're very grateful that you were able to come, and hopefully you'll be able to come on again.
I hope so.
Yeah, Cindy Vosburg, Executive Director of the Crescent City Del Norte Chamber of Commerce. Stay tuned, more public process coming up.